In the land of Canaan, there lived a man named Jacob who had 12 sons. Though he loved all of them, he had a special place in his heart for his son Joseph. Joseph was the firstborn of Jacob's beloved wife Rachel, and he was a joy to his father in every way. Jacob made his love for Joseph clear when he gave him a richly ornamented robe, woven with many colors. The robe shimmered in the sunlight, and wherever Joseph went, it set him apart. His brothers noticed, and with every glance at the robe, their hearts grew heavy with envy. Joseph, still a young man, worked alongside his brothers tending flocks in the fields. Sometimes he brought back reports to his father, especially when he saw things that were wrong. His honesty did not earn him any favor with his older brothers. But what turned their resentment into fury were the dreams. One morning, Joseph approached his brothers, excited. He said, "Listen to this dream I had. We were out in the field, tying up bundles of grain. Suddenly, my bundle stood upright, and your bundles gathered around and bowed down to mine." His brothers glared at him. "Do you think you'll reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" They snapped. Another night, Joseph had a second dream. He ran to share it. "This time, I saw the sun and moon and 11 stars. They all bowed down to me." When he told it to his father as well as his brothers, Jacob frowned. "What is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow to the ground before you?" Though Jacob rebuked him, he quietly pondered the meaning. But the brothers were angry. They couldn't stand Joseph anymore. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers who were grazing flocks near He traveled from Hebron, searching for them in the open countryside. A man found him wandering and told him the brothers had moved on to Dothan. When the brothers saw Joseph coming from a distance, they plotted together. "Here comes the dreamer," one of them said. "Let's kill him and throw him into one of these cities. We'll say a wild animal devoured him. Then we'll see what becomes of his dreams." Reuben, the oldest, tried to save him. "Let's not shed his blood. Throw him into this city, but don't lay a hand on him," he said, planning to rescue Joseph later. When Joseph reached them, they tore off his colorful robe and threw him into the empty pit. The ground was dry. The boy, once dressed in fine garments, now sat alone in the dark. While they ate their meal, a caravan of Ishmaelite traders approached, camels loaded with spices, balm, and myrrh, on their way to Egypt. Judah spoke up. "What will we gain if we kill him and hide it? Let's sell him to these traders. He is our brother, after all." The others agreed. So they pulled Joseph from the pit and sold him for 20 silver pieces. The traders bound him and led him away. Joseph looked back, wide-eyed and silent, as his brothers avoided his gaze. Reuben returned to the cistern later and found it empty. He tore his clothes in despair. "What have you done?" he cried to his brothers. They took Joseph's robe, slaughtered a goat, and dipped the fabric in blood. Then they brought it back to their father. "We found this. Examine it. Is it your son's robe?" Jacob trembled as he held it. "It is my son's robe. A wild animal has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces." Jacob tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and mourned for many days. No one could comfort him. Meanwhile, Joseph was on the road to Egypt, bound for a land he had never known, sold by those who should have protected him. But God was with him. Bound and dusty, Joseph entered Egypt under the scorching sun. The desert air was thick with the scent of spices and animals all around him. The world bustled, markets teemed with traders. Carts creaked under the weight of goods, and voices shouted in languages he had never heard. Joseph had been sold like a thing, a servant with no freedom, but God had not forgotten him. The Ishmaelite merchants led him to a public slave market where men were examined like livestock. Joseph stood silently as buyers inspected his arms and shoulders, noting his youth and strength. He was no longer the son with a beautiful robe or a boy of dreams. He was now a servant with no name in a strange land. Among the crowd stood a man named Potiphar, a high-ranking Egyptian officer. He served as the captain of Pharaoh Escada, powerful man with command over soldiers and influence in the royal court. Potiphar noticed Joseph and saw something different in him. Though a foreigner, Joseph carried himself with dignity. There was strength in his eyes, not brokenness. Potiphar purchased him and brought him into his household. There, Joseph was assigned task first, simple, then more important, as he proved his wisdom, honesty, and strength. Joseph worked hard. He listened, he learned the language, he cleaned the floors and prepared the food. But he did it all with excellence and humility. Every task, no matter how low, he did as if it mattered. And something happened. Wherever Joseph went, things prospered. The crops grew stronger. The animals became healthier. The workers cooperated better. Potiphar noticed, and the scriptures say it plainly, the Lord was with Joseph, and he prospered. The Lord gave him success in everything he did. Potiphar recognized the blessing on Joseph's life. He trusted him more and more. Eventually, Joseph was placed in charge of the entire household. Everything Potiphar owned: his estate, his money, his workers, and his schedule was entrusted to Joseph. The only thing Potiphar kept for himself was the food he ate. Joseph, still a young man, became the steward of a great house, not because of his background, but because of his faithfulness. Though he was far from home and unjustly sold, he lived with purpose and honor. He chose not to be bitter. He chose to believe that God was still with him. As the days passed, Joseph grew stronger. He was tall, capable, and handsome. He wore fine linen robes now, not as a son, but as a trusted servant. But while God's favor brought blessing, it also drew attention. Potiphar's wife began to notice Joseph. She watched him when he worked in the courtyard, when he walked through the house, when he issued instructions to the other servants. Desire grew in her heart, and soon she made her intention clear. She said to him, "Come and lie with me." Joseph froze. Her words were direct, tempting, dangerous, but Joseph refused. "My master trusts me with everything in this house. He has held back nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" Each day she tried again. She spoke to him softly. She caught him alone. But Joseph would not yield. He avoided her. He stayed focused. He remembered the God who had been with him in the pits and now in the palace. One day, Joseph entered the house to do his work, and none of the other servants were inside. Potiphar's wife saw her chance. She grabbed him by the cloak and demanded again, "Lie with me!" Joseph broke free. His cloak tore in her hand, but he fled the house without it. She stood there, holding the garment, rejected and angry. Her desire turned to fury. She called the other servants and shouted, "Look, this Hebrew slave came to make a fool of me. He tried to violate me, but I screamed, and he ran, leaving his cloak behind." When Potiphar returned home, she repeated the story, holding up the cloak as proof. Potiphar's face darkened. He was furious. Without a trial, without hearing Joseph's side, Potiphar ordered his trusted servant thrown into prison. One moment, Joseph was managing a household. The next, he was in chains once again. But even in the prison, something had not changed. God was still with him. Darkness swallowed the prison as Joseph was led inside. The walls were cold stone. The smell of dampness filled the air, and the iron bars echoed every footstep. This was no ordinary jail. It was the king's prison, where Pharaoh's own prisoners were kept under close watch. And now Joseph was among them, not because he had done wrong, but because he had done what was right. Though falsely accused and unjustly imprisoned, Joseph did not turn bitter. He worked, prayed, and waited. Though the chains rested on his arms, his faith remained free. The prison warden noticed something unusual about the young Hebrew. Joseph did not complain. He did not fight. He served others. He brought peace to a place filled with unrest. Over time, the warden trusted Joseph with more responsibility. Soon, Joseph was managing the prisoners themselves. He kept order, assigned tasks, and cared for those under his watch. The scripture says, "The Lord was with him. He showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden." And again, the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. One day, 2 new prisoners were thrown into the prison. They were both high-ranking servants of Pharaoh. One was the chief cupbearer, the other the chief baker. No one knew the details of their offenses, but the king was furious with them and had them confined. Joseph was assigned to attend to them. He served them food, made sure they had what they needed, and spoke with them often. Days passed, and Joseph noticed something was different one morning. Both men looked troubled. "What's the matter?" Joseph asked gently. "Why do you look so down today?" They answered, "We both had dreams last night. There is no one here to interpret them." Joseph's eyes lit up. "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." The cupbearer spoke first. "In my dream, I saw a vine with 3 branches. As soon as it budded, it blossomed, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand. I took the grapes, squeezed them into the cup, and gave it to Pharaoh." Joseph listened carefully. Then, with confidence and clarity, he said, "This is what it means. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position. You will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand again, just as you used to do." The cupbearer smiled in relief. Joseph then added, "But when all goes well for you, remember me, show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison. I was taken from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing to deserve being put in a dungeon." The baker, encouraged by the good news, stepped forward with his dream. "I had 3 baskets of bread on my head. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, but birds came and ate them out of the basket." Joseph's face became serious. "This is what it means. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head and impale your body on a pole. The birds will eat away your flesh." The baker's smile faded. His heart sank. 3 days later, it was Pharaoh's birthday. A great feast was held for all his officials. During the celebration, Pharaoh summoned both the cupbearer and the baker. As Joseph had said, the cupbearer was restored to his position. He returned to serving Pharaoh's wine, but the baker was executed, just as Joseph had warned. Joseph waited. Each time he heard footsteps down the prison corridor, his heart lifted. He hoped the cupbearer had spoken on his behalf. But no message came. Days passed, then weeks, then months. The cupbearer forgot him. Joseph remained in the prison, yet even in that forgotten place, Joseph remained faithful. He could not see the future, but he trusted the God who held it. 2 long years passed. Joseph remained in prison. He still served faithfully, but each day felt like the last. Though forgotten by the cupbearer, he had not been forgotten by God. One night, in the palace of Egypt, Pharaoh tossed in his bed. He was the most powerful man in the land, yet something disturbed his rest. He had a dream. In the dream, he stood by the Nile River. Out of the water came 7 fat, healthy cows. They grazed peacefully among the reeds. Then 7 other cows came up after them. These were thin, sickly, and ugly. They stood beside the healthy cows and then, suddenly, the sick cows swallowed up the fat ones. Yet even after devouring them, they looked just as thin and miserable as before. Pharaoh awoke, startled and confused. He drifted back to sleep and dreamed again. This time, 7 heads of grain, full and good, grew on a single stalk. Then 7 other heads sprouted thin, dried by the scorching east wind. The thin heads swallowed up the full ones. Pharaoh awoke, troubled. The dreams burned in his mind like fire. He knew they meant something, but he did not know what. He summoned all the magicians and wise men of Egypt. They listened to his dreams, but offered only guesses. None could explain them. Then the cupbearer spoke. He bowed and said, "Today I remember my faults. 2 years ago, when Pharaoh was angry with his servants, he placed me and the chief baker in prison. While we were there, we both had dreams on the same night. A young Hebrew, a servant of the captain of the guard, interpreted them for us. Everything happened just as he said. I was restored, and the baker was executed." Pharaoh sat forward. "Bring him," he ordered. Joseph was quickly summoned from the dungeon. He was shaved, bathed, and given clean robes. The guards led him through corridors of stone and gold, past towering pillars and silent servants. Before he knew it, Joseph stood before Pharaoh himself. Pharaoh looked at the young man before him. "I have had a dream," he said, "and no one can interpret it. But I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can explain it." Joseph bowed humbly. "I cannot do it," he replied, "but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires." Pharaoh nodded and repeated both dreams in full detail. Joseph listened carefully, his eyes focused, his heart steady. When Pharaoh finished, Joseph spoke. "The dreams of Pharaoh are one and the same. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows and the 7 good heads of grain both stand for 7 years of abundance. The 7 thin cows and 7 scorched heads of grain represent 7 years of famine." He paused and continued. "There will be 7 years of great plenty throughout the land of Egypt, but they will be followed by 7 years of severe famine. The abundance will be forgotten, and the famine will ravage the land." Pharaoh's face grew serious. The court listened in silence. "The reason the dream came to Pharaoh twice," Joseph added, "is because the matter has been firmly decided by God, and he will do it soon." Then Joseph, bold and confident, offered advice to the ruler of Egypt. "Let Pharaoh look for a wise and discerning man and put him in charge of the land. Appoint overseers to collect 1/5 of the harvest during the 7 good years. Store up the grain under Pharaoh's authority to be held in reserve. This food will be used during the 7 years of famine, so the country may not be ruined." Pharaoh and his officials were astonished. Not only had Joseph explained the dream clearly, but he had also offered the perfect solution. Pharaoh turned to his court. "Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God?" Then he turned to Joseph. "Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so wise and discerning as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people will submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you." Pharaoh took his signet ring and placed it on Joseph's hand. He dressed him in fine linen and placed a gold chain around his neck. He gave him a chariot and declared before him, "Make way." In one day, Joseph went from prisoner to ruler second, only to Pharaoh in all of Egypt. God had not forgotten him. In a single day, Joseph was lifted from prison and placed in power. One moment, he was a forgotten prisoner in chains. The next, he stood beside Pharaoh, clothed in royal garments, wearing Pharaoh's own signet ring, and riding in the 2nd chariot of Egypt. Everywhere he went, messengers called out before him, "Make way! But Joseph did not let his new position go to his head. He remembered who had given him wisdom. He remembered the one who had never left his side, not in the pit, not in slavery, and not in prison. Pharaoh gave Joseph a new name, Zephanath-Paneah, meaning God speaks and lives. He also gave him a wife, Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, a priest of On. In time, they would have 2 sons. But first came the task Joseph had been appointed to do. He traveled across Egypt, inspecting the land, appointing officials, and organizing storage cities. During the 7 years of abundance, the earth produced grain in great quantities. The fields overflowed. The storehouses filled. Joseph ordered that 1/5 of everything grown be set aside. The people of Egypt rejoiced in the harvest. They celebrated the riches of the land, but Joseph remained focused. He knew what was coming. He didn't waste time in comfort. He worked tirelessly, storing up food for the years ahead. As the harvests continued, the grain became so plentiful that they stopped measuring it. It was like the sand on the seashore beyond counting. During this time, Joseph's wife, Asenath, gave birth to their first son. Joseph named him Manasseh, saying, "God has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's household." The pain of betrayal and the ache of being far from home still lingered, but now God had brought healing. Later, they had a second son. Joseph named him Ephraim, saying, "God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering." Egypt had once been the place of his chains. Now it was the place of his rise. 7 years passed, the grain was stored, the cities were full, and then, just as God had said, the famine began. It started slowly. The rains stopped falling. The Nile dropped lower. The fields grew dry. Then the grain withered, and the ground cracked. The poor harvests spread worry. People came to the storehouses, and Joseph opened the grain reserves. "Go to Joseph," Pharaoh told the people. "Do whatever he tells you." Joseph sold grain to the Egyptians, keeping the kingdom alive. But the famine was not limited to Egypt. It spread far beyond its borders to other nations and lands, including Canaan, where Joseph's father and brothers still lived. They, too, felt the hunger. Their food stores began to run low. The fields bore nothing. The animals struggled to survive. Jacob looked at his sons and said, "Why do you just keep looking at each other? I have heard there is grain in Egypt. Go down and buy some for us, so that we may live and not die." 10 of Jacob's sons prepared for the journey. Only Benjamin, the youngest and the new favorite of Jacob, stayed behind. Jacob feared something might happen to him, just as he believed something terrible had happened to Joseph years before. And so, the 10 brothers set out unaware of the journey that lay ahead. Meanwhile, in Egypt, Joseph continued his work. He ruled wisely, served faithfully, and watched as the world came to him in need. His leadership brought peace in the midst of crisis. His storehouses fed the nations. Joseph had waited many years for his life to make sense. Now he saw how each step, each trial, and each loss had prepared him for this moment. The dreams he had as a boy once mocked and dismissed had not been forgotten by God. They were unfolding, and soon the very brothers who had thrown him into a pit would walk through the gates of Egypt, unaware that the one they betrayed now held their fate in his hands. The famine spread across the land like a slow shadow, leaving dust and hunger in its path. In Canaan, Jacob's family began to feel the full weight of it. The food stores were nearly gone, and his sons grew restless. Jacob, now an old man, gathered 10 of his sons. "Go to Egypt," he said, "buy grain so that we may live." But he refused to let Benjamin go. After losing Joseph years ago, Jacob could not bear the thought of something happening to Rachel's second son. So the 10 brothers set out. They crossed dry fields and weary villages until they reached the great kingdom of Egypt. There, they stood among crowds of people waiting to purchase food. Joseph, now governor of the land, personally oversaw the grain distribution. When the brothers arrived, they were brought before him. Joseph recognized them immediately. They bowed down to him, just as in his dream so many years ago, but they did not recognize him. He wore Egyptian garments, spoke through an interpreter, and sat in a position of power they could never have imagined for their younger brother. Joseph kept his identity hidden. He questioned them harshly. "Where do you come from?" "From the land of Canaan," they replied, "to buy food." Joseph studied their faces. All but Benjamin were there. "You are spies," he said firmly. "You have come to see where our land is unprotected." "No, my lord," they answered quickly. "We are honest men. Your servants were 12 brothers, the sons of one man in Canaan. The youngest is now with our father, and one is no more." Joseph's heart ached at those words. One is no more. But he did not reveal himself. "To test your story," he said, "you will not leave unless your youngest brother comes here. One of you will go, bring him back, while the rest remain in prison." He had them locked up for 3 days. On the 3rd day, Joseph changed the plan. "I fear God," he told them. "Leave one brother here in custody. The rest may go home with grain. But you must return with your youngest brother to prove your words." The brothers spoke among themselves, unaware that Joseph understood every word. "We are being punished for what we did to Joseph," said Reuben. "Didn't I tell you not to sin against him?" But we would not listen. Joseph turned away and wept. He returned and chose Simeon to stay behind. The others were given sacks of grain, and Joseph secretly ordered that their silver be returned in each man's bag. They left Egypt, unaware of the silver hidden with their food. When they stopped for the night, and one brother opened his sack, he cried out, "My silver has been returned!" The others panicked. "What has God done to us?" They returned to Canaan and told Jacob everything. When they showed him the silver, fear filled his heart. "You have bereaved me of my children," he cried. "Joseph is gone. Simeon is gone. And now you want to take Benjamin." Reuben offered his own sons as a guarantee, but Jacob refused. Weeks passed. The famine grew worse. Eventually, Jacob had no choice. "Go back and buy more food," he said. But Judah answered, "The man warned us plainly. We cannot return unless we bring Benjamin." Jacob struggled. Then finally, he said, "If it must be so, take him. And may God Almighty grant you mercy before the man." The brothers returned to Egypt, this time with Benjamin. When Joseph saw them approaching, he said to his steward, "Bring them to my house. Prepare a feast." The brothers were afraid. They thought they were being accused of stealing the silver, but when they arrived, the steward spoke kindly to them. "Do not be afraid. Your God must have put treasure in your sacks." Then Simeon was brought out to them. Joseph entered the house. When he saw Benjamin, his youngest brother, he could barely hold back his tears. "Is this your youngest brother, the one you told me about?" he asked. Benjamin nodded. Joseph said, "God be gracious to you, my son," then hurried from the room and wept in private. Later, they were seated for the feast. Each brother was served in order of age, and Benjamin received 5 times more food than the others. They ate and drank, not knowing the final test was yet to come. Joseph had one more plan. He would place his silver cup in Benjamin's sack and watch what his brothers would do when faced with the chance to abandon him. Just as they had once abandoned Joseph, would they repeat the past? Or had their hearts changed? As the brothers prepared to leave Egypt with their sacks of grain, Joseph gave quiet instructions to his steward. "Fill their bags with food," he said, "but place my silver cup in the sack of the youngest one." The steward obeyed. placing the valuable silver cup in Benjamin's sack, along with his grain and silver. The next morning, the brothers set off for home, unaware that their greatest test was just ahead. Before they had gone far, Joseph sent his steward after them. The man caught up with them and said, "Why have you repaid good with evil? My master's silver cup is missing. It was used for divination. You have done a wicked thing." The brothers were shocked. "Why would we steal?" they protested. "If any of us has the cup, he shall die, and the rest of us will become your slaves." The steward replied, "Let it be as you say, but only the one with the cup will become my slave. The rest may go free." They quickly opened their sacks, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest. To their horror, the silver cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Their hearts sank. They tore their clothes in grief and returned to the city together. No one left Benjamin behind. They stood before Joseph once more, trembling. Judah stepped forward. "We cannot clear ourselves, my lord," he said. "God has uncovered our guilt. We are now your slaves." But Joseph said, "Only the one who had the cup will remain. The rest of you may go in peace." Judah did not move. He bowed low and pleaded, "My lord, please let me speak. We have a father, an old man, and a younger brother born to him in his old age. His name is Benjamin. His brother is dead, he alone is left of his mother's children, and his father loves him dearly. If we return without him, our father will die in sorrow. I promise to bring the boy back. Let me stay in his place. Take me as your slave instead." Joseph's heart could bear no more. Tears streamed down his face. He turned from the room to weep, then returned and cried out, "Everyone, leave us!" His attendants hurried out, leaving only Joseph and his brothers. Then, through tears, Joseph said in his own tongue, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" The brothers stood frozen, unable to answer. Fear gripped them. The brother they had sold was now ruler of Egypt. But Joseph stepped forward. "Come near to me," they approached, still trembling. "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. But do not be distressed. Do not be angry with yourselves for selling me, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. There have already been 2 years of famine, and 5 more are coming. God sent me ahead to preserve your lives. It was not you who sent me here, but God." He embraced Benjamin, weeping. Then he kissed each of his brothers, and they talked freely with him. Word reached Pharaoh's palace. Pharaoh was pleased to hear Joseph's brothers had come. "Tell your brothers to bring their father and their families. I will give them the best land in Egypt," Pharaoh said. Joseph gave them wagons, food for the journey, and new clothes. He gave Benjamin extra gifts and silver as they left. He called out, "Do not quarrel on the way." When the brothers returned to Canaan, they ran to their father. "Joseph is alive. He is ruler over all Egypt." Jacob's heart stopped. He did not believe them at first, but when he saw the wagons and gifts from Egypt, his spirit revived. "It is enough," he said. "My son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die." Jacob, now called Israel, set out for Egypt. On the way, God spoke to him in a vision. "Do not be afraid to go to Egypt. I will make you into a great nation there. I will go down with you, and I will surely bring you back again." In Egypt, Joseph rode out in his chariot to meet his father. When they saw each other, Joseph embraced him and wept for a long time. Jacob said, "Now I can die in peace, because I have seen your face and know you are alive." Joseph settled his family in the land of Goshen, the best part of Egypt. There they lived in peace, and their people multiplied. Years passed. When Jacob grew old and was near death, he blessed each of his sons, then breathed his last. Joseph buried him with honor, and later As Joseph neared his own death, he told his brothers, "God will surely come to your aid and bring you back to the land he promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." Joseph had been sold into slavery, but God had never left him. Through pain and betrayal, through waiting and rising, Joseph fulfilled the dreams given to him as a boy, not for his glory, but to save many lives.